My father demanded my four-bedroom house for my brother, because he was starting a family while I'm single and have no life. I told him he shouldn't worry too much about his golden child, because he's not even his. My name is Joe, and at 38 years old, I had just rebuilt a fortress. I spent 2 solid years working on the Craftsman house in Portland, and it was perfect. The 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths weren't just space. They were the concrete, visible proof of every single thing I built without a handout from anyone. The house was a quiet monument to my own independence, standing proud on a newly poured foundation, insulated against the world. I knew every inch of the Douglas fir framing, every run of the new copper plumbing, and every single circuit in the upgraded electrical panel. Growing up in Beaverton, I learned early that the world was split. There were kids like my brother, Ethan, who got crowns, and then there were the rest of us watching from the sidelines. Ethan, who is 4 years younger than me, was always the crown prince. When I turned 12, I got a rusted, bent-up used bike from a yard sale. When Ethan hit 12, he had a brand new bike and a party at a trampoline park. I remember asking my dad why the difference was so massive. His answer, delivered with a sigh of impatient finality, was, "Life's not fair, Joe. Be grateful or be quiet." The favoritism wasn't just about birthdays, it defined our lives. Ethan managed C's and D's, but if he scraped up 1 B+, Dad would take the whole family to Morton's Steakhouse. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters straight in college, I got a grunt if I was lucky. Mom saw it, but she always stayed quiet, a silent enabler of the dynamic. College was where the difference became impossible to ignore. Ethan was handed a full ride paid for by Dad, covering everything from tuition to books. Me, Dad said I needed to build character by paying my own way. So I worked 3 jobs, up at 5 in the morning for the diner shift, evenings stocking shelves at the library, and all weekend long doing demo work for a contractor who paid cash. That construction gig, doing demo and manual labor, started as rent money, but it became something much more important. My boss, Russ, was the first man to ever look at me and see something more than an inconvenience. He handed me a sledgehammer and pointed at a wall. "Hit it like it owes you money," he'd said. After a month, he pulled me aside. "You're not just swinging for a paycheck, Joe. You actually look at what you're tearing down. That's rare." He started teaching me to read blueprints and calculate material costs. I carried that knowledge with me, calculating lumber prices during business lectures. I graduated with a degree in zero debt. Ethan, meanwhile, changed his major 4 times and took 6 years, all on Dad's dime, to get a meaningless liberal arts degree. After graduation, I spent 6 years building my property development company. I lived with 3 roommates in a cramped house, drove a Honda with over 180,000 miles that burned oil, and saved every penny. Ethan received a down payment for a condo and a new Audi from Dad. I started by taking every garbage job nobody else wanted, slowly learning how to flip and manage properties. At the age of 30, I bought my first fixer-upper in a sketchy part of town. I slept on a cot for 8 months, fixing everything myself. I jacked the settling foundation, poured new footers, and pulled permits for every single piece of work. When I sold it for a 45% profit, I rolled every dollar into the next property. My company grew quickly. Ethan, of course, bounced between jobs, none lasting more than 8 months. Dad always had an excuse ready for him. The boss didn't appreciate his innovative thinking. Or, it was a bad fit. It was never, ever Ethan's fault. Then came the Craftsman. 3 years ago, I found it. It was completely gutted by a previous owner who ran out of money. Exposed studs crawling with carpenter ants, ancient, leaky plumbing, and terrifying knob and tube wiring. But underneath all the rot was solid Douglas fir framing. I spent 2 solid years on that house, working my projects during the day and coming home to work until midnight by the light of a headlamp. I rewired the entire system, upgraded the panel to 200 amps, replumbed the whole system, and restored the original hardwood floors. Every single dollar, every single hour was mine. That house wasn't just a home, it was the physical proof that I could build something valuable and lasting entirely on my own. It was a shield. Meanwhile, Ethan and Kelsey's engagement was stretching into its 2nd year. They lived in the condo Dad had bought, surviving on Ethan's occasional freelance work and cash infusions from my parents. Kelsey, with her designer sunglasses and no credit score, had a talent for spending other people's money. Ethan's credit card debt was approaching $50,000. Dad paid the minimums every month to keep him afloat. I had built actual walls, worth around $680,000. Ethan couldn't even build a credit score above 590. The call came from Mom on a Wednesday. Her voice was nervous. "Honey, your father and I would love to see your house. We'd love to come for dinner this weekend. Just family." Part of me knew instantly that this was a bad idea, that something was seriously wrong. The other part, the part still hoping for some scrap of normal acknowledgement, agreed anyway. I spent the next few days preparing. I deep cleaned the entire house. I dry aged the best ribeye steaks I could find, cooked Dad's favorite roasted potatoes, and stocked up on expensive coffee. I was preparing a feast, but underneath the civility, I knew I was preparing for battle. They arrived Saturday at 6 o'clock sharp. Dad walked in looking around like a building inspector, saying nothing. Mom compensated with overly enthusiastic compliments. Ethan and Kelsey showed up 20 minutes late, which was perfectly on brand. Kelsey immediately started photographing everything with her phone. The foundation was already cracked before anyone even sat down. The scent of dry, aged ribeye couldn't mask the building dread that settled over the craftsmen as my parents, Ethan and Kelsey, walked through the door. Dad's inspection, like gaze, lingered on the restored crown molding and the newly built-in shelving, but he offered no genuine praise, just a noncommittal hum. Mom, as usual, overcompensated, cooing about the color of the paint and the size of the kitchen island. Ethan and Kelsey, who were predictably 20 minutes late, whispered loudly in the hallway, interrupting Mom's forced admiration. When the family tour reached the master suite, which I had spent months restoring with reclaimed timber beams, Kelsey finally broke the silence with a passive-aggressive pronouncement. "Wow, Joe. This bedroom is literally bigger than our entire condo bedroom. Must be nice having all this space just for you. Kind of a waste, right? For one person." Ethan was quick to add his contribution, leaning against the doorframe with a smug smile. "Seriously, bro, what do you even do with 4 bedrooms? You don't even have anyone over. Pretty sad, honestly. You're just here alone every night in this big empty place." I felt the familiar, dull thud of old resentment in my chest. They weren't seeing the house. They were seeing my life through their own narrow, judgmental lens. I simply smiled, a thin, meaningless curve of my lips, and said nothing, ushering them back toward the dining room. I had learned 38 years ago that arguing with Ethan only validated his entitlement. Dinner started civilly, focusing on safe topics like the weather and Mom's garden for maybe 15 minutes. It was a fleeting, uncomfortable attempt at the normalcy we had never truly shared. Then Dad, who hadn't touched his coffee, pushed the cup slightly away from his plate. "The house is impressive, Joe. Better than I expected, honestly. You've done well for yourself." He paused, and my internal alarm bells went off. Any compliment from Dad always carried a steep price tag. Though, I have to say it's way too much for a bachelor. All these empty bedrooms. Before I could form a response, a defense of my life's choices, Ethan cleared his throat with an exaggerated theatrical sound. "Actually, since we're all here, Kelsey and I have some exciting news." He reached across the table and took Kelsey's hand. "We've finally set a wedding date, December the 15th, and we're planning to start a family right away." Mom immediately dissolved into tears of joy. Dad stood up to shake Ethan's hand, his voice thick with pride. "Congratulations. This is perfect timing," he announced, the pride shining brightly, blinding him to anything else. Then he pivoted, his gaze landing squarely on me, cold and deliberate. "Ethan and Kelsey need a proper family home. That condo is too small for children." I nodded slowly, trying to sound helpful, trying to divert the inevitable. "There are some good neighborhoods opening up. I could help them look. I know a few brokers." "Actually," Dad interrupted, cutting through my suggestion like a knife, "your mother and I have been discussing a more practical solution." The room went silent, thick with unspoken expectation. "Joe, you have this 4-bedroom house with 3 empty rooms. Ethan and Kelsey need space for their future family. It makes perfect sense for you to give them this place." I felt the blood drain from my face. I blinked, trying to process the audacity, the sheer, unimaginable entitlement. "I'm sorry." "What?" Dad waved a dismissive hand, treating my shock as a mere formality. "You're in real estate, Joe. You flip properties constantly. This is just another house to you. They need a home. You're one man who doesn't even need this much space. You can find an apartment. Let them settle in here." Kelsey was already looking around the dining room, her eyes gleaming, mentally rearranging my life's work. Ethan had that smug, entitled look, the look of the golden child who already knew he had won. "This isn't just another property," I said, keeping my voice level, forcing myself to breathe deeply. The muscles in my jaw felt like granite. "This is my home. I spent 2 years rebuilding it myself." "Oh, come on," Ethan scoffed, rolling his eyes dramatically. "It's just a house. Stop being so dramatic." "And it's not about the house," Dad said, his voice rising in impatience. "It's about family. Your brother is starting a family. If you cared about family at all, this wouldn't even be a question." My control finally fractured, but I kept the anger internal. "I care about family, but asking me to hand over my home isn't reasonable. I can help with a down payment, a very large one." Kelsey's smile vanished completely. She glared at me, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Wow, your brother needs help, and you're too selfish? Too wrapped up in your lonely little kingdom to help him." "I'm offering to help," I countered, standing my ground. "Just not by giving up my home." "Some help," Ethan muttered, his face flushing with the indignation of a prince denied a jewel. He leaned forward. "Why am I not surprised? You've always thought you were better than me, Mr. Self-Made Man. Meanwhile, you're sitting in this huge house alone like some pathetic hermit. No girlfriend, no friends, just your tools and empty bedrooms. But sure, hang on to your fortress." Kelsey delivered the final, cruel blow. leaning in close, her eyes like chips of ice. "You're going to die alone in this house, Joe," old and bitter. The rest of the dinner descended rapidly into chaos. Dad's voice got louder, fueled by a panicked defensiveness. Mom made weak attempts to soothe, but her comments always sided with Ethan. Ethan and Kelsey teamed with comments about my miserable existence and how much better the house would be with actual life, instead of one sad man's midlife crisis. By the time they finally left, it was a blur of slammed doors and bitter parting shots. Kelsey actually knocked a picture frame off the entry table. Ethan's parting shot was slung over his shoulder. "You're going to regret this." Standing alone in my perfectly restored kitchen, cleaning up the mess and the debris of their entitlement, I was burning with anger, but beneath the rage was a certainty. I would not bend. This house was mine, and I knew with a cold, fierce clarity that I would burn it to the foundation before I ever handed the keys to Ethan. They had just reopened a 38-year-old wound, and now I was ready to fight back. The following week felt less like family drama and more like a siege. They hadn't just asked for the keys, they'd declared war on my peace. The Sunday morning after the dinner, I woke up to 6 missed calls from Mom. 3 voicemails followed, each one a variation on the same theme of disappointment. Dad was hurt, Ethan was devastated, and I desperately needed to reconsider for the sake of family unity. One text from her read, "Please don't let pride destroy this family. You know your brother needs this. Why are you being so stubborn?" There was zero acknowledgement of the insane request they had made. There was no mention of how I might feel having my life's work called wasted space. It was only about them, their needs and their convenience. I didn't respond to any of it. That afternoon, Dad called directly. His voice was cold, clipped, and heavy with authoritarian disapproval. "You're being unreasonable, Joe, and frankly embarrassing. Ethan needs this house. Ethan needs a steady job and a reality check." I shot back, the anger bubbling up, breaking through my carefully maintained stoicism. "Not my house." "Watch your mouth," he warned. "That's your brother you're talking about. The same brother who's trying to start a family while you sit in that house alone playing martyr. And this is my home you're trying to give away like a hand. Me down, jacket." I countered. The line went dead. He had hung up on me. The pressure campaign started in earnest. Mom called daily with tearful, rambling speeches designed to trigger maximum guilt. My Uncle Isaac, a decent but strictly traditional man, sent an email explaining how real men put family first. My Aunt Paula, who I barely saw, posted cryptic Facebook statuses clearly directed at me. "Some people value things over people." Even my cousin Blake sent a message, "Dude, don't be that guy. Why not just help them out?" Everyone had an opinion on my selfishness, but none of them, not one, had bothered to ask me about the 2 years I spent on that house, the back-breaking work, or the lifetime of neglect I had endured. Then, the family drama went public. Ethan posted about how difficult it was finding affordable family housing in Portland. Kelsey shared it, adding a saccharine comment. "One family members could help but choose not to, praying for a change of heart." The comment section instantly filled with relatives making thinly veiled references to selfish people and praying for the right thing to happen. I deleted Facebook that night. I was through with their manufactured outrage. But Dad escalated the situation beyond emotional appeals. He started calling my business clients. Not many at first, just enough to cause problems. He told them I was dealing with personal issues and might not be reliable, implying financial instability or emotional breakdown. The calls started the next day. 3 clients called asking if everything was okay. One, a major investor I was negotiating with, postponed a project stating they needed resolution of your family situation before releasing the next draw. That crossed a line. Family drama was one thing. Attacking my livelihood was a declaration of war. That project alone was worth over $500,000, and losing it could have set my entire company back 2 years. I went straight to my business partner, Ryder Vance. Ryder is a former Marine, all efficiency and sharp edges. I laid out the situation, the demand, the harassment, and the client calls. Ryder, standing in my newly finished living room, looked around at the pristine custom millwork and hardwood floors. "Your family is sabotaging your business to force you out," he said, his voice flat and hard. "That's warfare. When are you hitting back?" I felt a cold certainty settle deep in my stomach, replacing the burning rage. "Not yet." "Document everything," I told him. I spent 2 days doing damage control, reassuring the clients who hadn't pulled out, showing them my financial statements, and lying about a supposed misunderstanding within the family. The Harrisons, who had signed for a $400,000 renovation, were spooked. The Martins threatened to pull out of a $680,000 new build. Anderson Commercial wanted written assurances before releasing the next draw. I spent my days fighting the fire my own family had started. It cost me sleep and it cost me money, but it strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about survival. I wouldn't let them take my company and my life's work. I doubled down, working 18 hours a day, preparing for the next escalation. I knew it was coming. The moment they realized the calls hadn't worked, they would try something bigger, something more desperate. I thought the client's sabotage was the worst they could do, but I completely underestimated the sheer, desperate audacity of entitlement. 2 weeks after the disastrous dinner, I came home on a Thursday evening to find a black Audi, sleek and new, parked haphazardly in my driveway. It was Ethan's. My stomach dropped, a cold, hard knot of dread. I moved swiftly toward the back door, the one that led straight into the mudroom and the kitchen. When I got there, I didn't need to touch the handle to know something was wrong. There were fresh scratches around the deadbolt, the kind of deep scoring that could only come from a screwdriver or a crowbar, and the door frame itself was splintered slightly where they had tried to pry it open. They hadn't just visited, they had broken in. I pushed the door open to find Ethan and Kelsey standing in my newly built master bathroom, a contractor with a measuring tape looking extremely uncomfortable beside them. Kelsey was gesturing wildly with her phone, completely oblivious to my presence at first. The master bathroom needs updating, she was saying to the contractor. I'm thinking Carrara marble countertops and one of those rainfall showers, and this bedroom would be perfect for the nursery. We definitely need built-in storage and expansion on this closet. What the heck are you doing in my house? I snapped, the sound echoing off the pristine porcelain tiles. Ethan turned, annoyance flashing across his face, not surprise or guilt. Relax, bro. Just getting some preliminary measurements. Dad said you'd come around eventually, so we wanted to be ready to move in quickly. The contractor gathered his tools immediately, his eyes wide as he backed toward the door. Look, I thought this was finalized. They showed me the address. Said the owner had approved the walkthrough. Well, the owner didn't, I said, stepping closer, my voice low and dangerous. And you are trespassing. Now get out. The contractor didn't need to be told twice. He fled through the back door. Kelsey crossed her arms, standing her ground. This is exactly your problem, Joe. Everything is yours, yours, yours. Some of us understand what family means, what real sacrifice looks like. Family doesn't mean breaking into my house and planning renovations without my permission. I growled, pointing at the damaged deadbolt. We didn't break in. Ethan lied instantly, even as the splintered wood around the lock shouted the opposite. Since this will be our house soon anyway, we were just trying to be proactive. You are being delusional, I told him, stepping right up to him, invading his space, something I rarely did. Because this will never be your house. Ever. We're delusional. Kelsey's voice went shrill and loud. You're the one sitting here alone playing house like you're somebody important. This place is wasted on you. We'd actually use it. We'd fill it with life and love instead of one bitter man's ego. Get out before I call the cops. I snapped. I felt a reckless clarity, a desire to hurt him the way he was trying to hurt me. Better single than a leech who's never earned anything. I shot the barb at Ethan. When's the last time you held a job for more than 6 months? Ethan's face went scarlet. I'm trying to start a family! What are you doing? Building my own life without handouts. You should try it. The argument was over. Ethan and Kelsey followed me out, spewing insults and threats. As they left, Kelsey deliberately knocked over a small antique lamp I had restored, and Ethan, in a final act of childish rage, put his fist through the drywall of the hallway, leaving a hole the size of a dinner plate. You'll regret this, Ethan hissed from the doorway, moments before the security door slammed shut behind them. I stood in my damaged hallway, surveying the wreckage of their tantrum. The hole cost me $200 in materials and 3 hours of my own time to patch and repaint, but the violation was priceless. That night, I changed every single lock in the house, replacing them with high-security deadbolts, and spent $300 on a top-tier security camera system that covered every exterior angle. My fortress was being reinforced. The next escalation came 4 days later. Ryder called me during a morning meeting. Joe, someone's been calling our clients, spreading rumors about financial instability. They're saying personal bankruptcy and incomplete projects. My stomach bottomed out. What kind of rumors? 3 clients called this morning. The Harrisons. Remember the $400,000 renovation? They're spooked. The Martins threatened to pull out. Anderson Commercial wants written assurances before releasing the next draw. This is professional suicide. Ryder and I tracked the source. Kelsey's phone number. She must have photographed our client list during her initial illegal tour. Legal action? Ryder asked. Not yet. Document everything. Every call, every timestamp, every client conversation. You were right, Ryder. This is warfare. I realized I could no longer fight this with emotional appeals or even just defense. They were criminal and financially aggressive. I contacted the attorney Rebecca Stone. I laid out the harassment, the business sabotage, and the attempted break-in. You have grounds for a restraining order, she said simply. But it will permanently damage your relationship with your family. It's already damaged, I replied. I need legal boundaries, not family unity. Rebecca Stone drafted the paperwork. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. But something still nagged at me, something deeper than the immediate conflict. Why did Patrick's favoritism toward Ethan always feel so desperate, so forced? It was a question I had avoided my entire life, but now armed with documentation and an attorney, I decided it was time to find the real answer. Rebecca told me the restraining order was necessary, but something still nagged at me. Why did Patrick try so desperately hard to prove Ethan was worth more? It was more than simple favoritism. It was manic, almost desperate. I started thinking about the physical differences. The simple, obvious things I had always dismissed. I spent an evening spreading out old family photos on my custom-built kitchen island. The house was quiet, and the only sounds were the faint hum of the new refrigerator and the occasional shift of the century-old framing. The more I looked, the more obvious it became. Ethan simply did not look like Dad or me, or anyone on Dad's side of the family. We are a family of solid, dark blue eyes and strong, squared-off jawlines. Ethan has distinctly hazel eyes, a sharper jawline, and a different build entirely. Even the mannerisms were wrong. Dad and I both have this unconscious habit of cracking our knuckles when we are thinking hard or stressed. Ethan never did it. It was small things adding up to a massive, screaming absence. I knew I needed confirmation, and the first place to look was the past. I carefully called my cousin Monica in Seattle. We made small talk for about 20 minutes, discussing work and her kids, before I steered the conversation to my target. "Did your mom ever mention anything weird about Ethan's birth?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, as if asking about the weather. There was a long, awkward pause on the line. "Why are you asking, Joe? Is this about the way Dad always treated you guys differently?" "Partly," I admitted. "I'm just trying to understand the depth of it." Monica eventually spoke, her voice lower now. "I don't know anything for certain. My mom would kill me if she knew I told you this. But I remember overhearing her mention a guy named Connor. Someone Mom dated briefly in college before Patrick. Connor." The name hit me with the force of a sledgehammer, precisely the shock I had felt doing demolition work years ago. I knew my mother kept an old college yearbook in a dusty cardboard box in the attic of their Beaverton house. I had seen it as a child, full of pictures of people I didn't know. That weekend, I drove over to my parents' house when I knew they were out playing golf. I still had the childhood key that had never been changed. I let myself into the cold, familiar silence of the house that had never felt like home. I went straight to the attic, found the box, and pulled out the yearbook. I flipped through the pages until I found the section for the year Mom graduated. There he was, Connor Reeves, senior photo. Confident smile, dark, wavy hair, and unmistakable hazel eyes. In the margin next to his picture, a small heart had been crudely scratched out with a pen. The evidence was anecdotal, but the emotional logic was suddenly flawless. Patrick's overcompensation wasn't about misplaced love. It was about desperately trying to claim a child that wasn't biologically his. Getting DNA proof would be a delicate, strategic operation. I couldn't ask anyone directly. I researched Connor Reeves online. He lived in Denver, ran a successful consulting firm, and was married with 3 grown kids. In every photo I found of him, I saw Ethan's face looking back at me. The next family interaction was Uncle Isaac's birthday lunch. Dad had texted to say I was expected. I showed up, radiating a fake, neutral civility. I was there not for reconciliation but for sampling. During lunch, I palmed Dad's water glass. Later, I grabbed Ethan's empty soda can when he stepped away from the table. Both went immediately into separate, sealed zip-top bags I had hidden in my car. For Connor, I used my business network. I reached out through LinkedIn, claiming to need consulting expertise in the Denver market. We set up a brief video call. He seemed genuinely decent, successful, and articulate. I mentioned I would be in Denver for business next week, and suggested a quick coffee meeting. Connor, who appeared entirely unsuspecting, readily agreed. The coffee meeting was pleasant. Connor spoke easily about his firm and his family. When he excused himself to use the restroom, I moved quickly. I grabbed his used coffee cup and the napkin he had used, sealed them in bags I had brought, and then resumed the conversation seamlessly when he returned. I immediately sent all 3 samples, Patrick's, Ethan's, and Connor's, to a DNA testing service, paying a significant premium for rush processing. I was betting my sanity and the rest of my relationship with my family on the results. I had laid the groundwork for the most destructive weapon I could wield. Now, I just had to wait for the evidence to arrive. The restraining order hearing was scheduled first, only 3 weeks away. That would be the opening shot. The DNA results, if positive, would be the nuclear bomb. The restraining order hearing arrived before the DNA results. It was the moment I stopped being the quiet, compliant son and became their legal opponent. I spent the morning in the small, sterile courthouse, feeling utterly detached. Rebecca Stone, my attorney, was a picture of professional calm. She presented the documentation, the police reports from the break-in attempt, the photographs of the damaged door and drywall, and the screenshots showing Kelsey's systematic sabotage of my client relationships. Ethan and Kelsey were there, accompanied by Dad. They looked deeply offended, as if my filing the order was the real betrayal, not their attempt to steal my home and destroy my business. The judge barely deliberated. He looked down at Ethan, his expression stern. "Mr. Harris, you and Ms. Tours are to maintain a minimum distance of 100 yards from your brother's residence and place of business. There is to be absolutely no direct or indirect contact. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. This behavior is entirely unacceptable. Ethan's face went purple with suppressed rage and humiliation. Kelsey looked like she wanted to physically attack the courtroom furniture. Dad, who had come to support his golden child, stood up, sputtering in disbelief at the judge. "One more outburst, and you'll be removed, sir," the judge warned, his voice cutting through the tension. As Rebecca and I left the courtroom, walking swiftly toward the parking lot, Dad caught up to me, his face drawn and furious. "You got a court order against your own brother, Joe. You've let money and pride turn you into this monster. My brother tried to break into my house twice," I countered, stopping just long enough to look him in the eye. "His fiancée sabotaged my business. I protected myself. This is what you've become," Dad hissed. "So obsessed with your house that you destroy your family." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied, the coldness in my voice surprising even me. "You did, by treating Ethan like he could do no wrong while treating me like an inconvenience for 38 years. You got exactly what you deserved." Dad's face darkened, the deep lines of stress etched around his eyes. "I gave both you boys everything. You just didn't appreciate it." "Ethan needed more support. He's always struggled more than you. Wonder why that is," I said, leaning in slightly, delivering the first shot of the coming nuclear strike. "Maybe ask Mom about Connor Reeves." Dad froze, every muscle in his body locked. His expression wasn't anger, it was pure, terrifying, dawning fear. I didn't wait for him to respond. I just walked to my car and drove away, leaving him alone and shattered in the middle of the parking lot. The DNA results arrived 3 days later. The heavy manila envelope sat on my counter for an hour before I opened it, the weight of 38 years of resentment and confusion contained within those pages. The report was technical, full of genetic markers and probability calculations, but the conclusion was stated clearly in bold font. Patrick Harris and Ethan Harris shared no paternal DNA. Connor Reeves and Ethan Harris showed a 99.9% probability of biological paternity. I was right. The lifetime of manic favoritism wasn't random. It was fueled by a desperate, guilty secret. The fact that Ethan wasn't Patrick's son explained everything: the overcompensation, the blindness to Ethan's failures, and the neglect toward me, his biological son. Ryder came over that evening. I poured us 2 whiskeys and showed him the 14-page report. "This explains the warfare," he said simply. "What are you going to do with it?" Part of me, the old, hurt part, wanted to immediately blow everything up. But the new, cold part of me, the strategic builder, knew better. I remembered Ethan's fist through my wall, Kelsey's calls to my clients, the attempted break-in, and the thousands of dollars I had spent on legal fees so far. They had tried to steal my life. "I'm going to use it," I said. "This isn't just evidence. This is leverage." My first move was surgically precise. I wrote a single brief letter, completely devoid of emotion or accusation, and sent it to Dad via professional courier, signature required. The letter simply stated, "Enclosed is a DNA test proving Ethan is not your biological son. Connor Reeves, Mom's college boyfriend, is his father. The test included samples from you, Ethan, and Connor. Results are conclusive. I have copies in multiple locations. If the harassment about my house continues, I will share these results with the entire family. If you leave me alone, this stays between us. Your choice." I included a copy of the full report, all the data, the probability calculations, and the lab certifications. It was impossible to dispute. The next 48 hours were silent, the quietest my life had been since the dinner. Then Dad called. His voice, once booming and authoritative, was now thin and strained. "We need to talk," he said, "in person. Immediately." I replied, my voice remaining neutral. "Neutral location. I'm not meeting you here. We agreed to meet at a nondescript diner off the Interstate 5. Dad looked terrible when I walked in. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes hollow and bloodshot. He'd clearly told Mom, because their car was parked outside, and I could see her through the window, sitting in the passenger seat with her face buried in her hands. Inside the diner, Dad ordered a coffee he didn't drink. He sat in silence for 5 minutes, just staring at the steam rising from the mug, unable to look at me. "How long have you known?" he finally whispered. "About 2 months. Suspected longer. The yearbook sealed it. I suspected when Ethan was born." He confessed, his voice shaking. "The timing was right. Your mother had been distant, and he didn't look like me. But I never wanted confirmation. I thought if I loved him enough, it would make the biology irrelevant. So you overcompensated." I finished for him. "Tried to prove he was yours by giving him everything." "And what about me? Your actual son?" Dad looked truly broken, his hands shaking around his coffee cup. "You were so independent, Joe. I thought you didn't need as much. I thought you'd be fine." "I needed my father," I said, the words barely audible. "Not money. Just acknowledgement that I mattered." "I know," he choked out. "And I failed you. I've been failing you for 38 years. It was the apology I had waited my entire life for, but it felt like nothing. It was too late, too much damage." "Does Ethan know?" I asked. "Not from me." "Your mother wants to talk to you." I don't want to talk to her. Please. He begged, just give her 5 minutes. The silence that followed the letter was heavier than any shouting. I had won the house, but the victory was a family-sized detonation. Against my better judgment, I walked out to the parking lot where my mother waited in the passenger seat of their car. When she saw me, she got out, mascara streaked down her face. I'm sorry, she said immediately, her voice raw. For all of it. The affair, the secret, letting your father treat you differently. All of it. How long did it last? I asked, cutting straight to the core. 3 months. Connor came back for a work project. Your father and I were having problems. I was weak. It ended when Connor went back to Denver. I never told him about Ethan. Does he know now? I don't think so. You didn't tell him. I met him for coffee. Told him I was a potential client. Took a DNA sample. He thinks it was just business. I didn't tell him he has a 34-year-old son. Mom's relief was obvious, almost nauseating in its intensity. Thank you. Thank you for that. I didn't do it for you. I stated plainly. Connor seems decent. It didn't seem fair to drop a bomb in his life when he's done nothing wrong. What happens now? That depends, I said, laying out the terms again. The house situation ends immediately. No more demands. No more harassment. Ethan and Kelsey stay away from me, my business, my property. You and Dad leave me alone unless I initiate contact. Do that, and this stays private. And if we don't, then everyone finds out. Every relative, every family friend. I'll mail copies of the full report to everyone on your Christmas card list. Ethan will find out his life is built on a lie. Dad will be the man who got cuckolded and spent 34 years overcompensating. And you'll be the woman who cheated, lied for 3 decades, and let her real son suffer while protecting her mistake. Mom flinched, reeling from the blunt cruelty. That's cruel, Joe. So is asking me to give up my home for your mistake. I countered. So is watching you enable Dad's favoritism my entire life, because you were protecting your secret. We all make choices. I left them in the parking lot, drove home, and sat in my house feeling empty. Not triumphant, just drained. 2 days later, Dad called. We've agreed to your terms. No more contact. No more pressure. Just leave it alone. Don't tell Ethan. As long as you keep your end, I confirmed. There was a long pause, filled with the static of his broken life. There's something else. Your mother and I are separating. This brought up too much. We're filing for divorce. I couldn't muster any sympathy. That's between you two, I said, and hung up. The next few weeks were the silence of a fallout zone. The divorce proceedings were bitter. I heard through my cousin Blake that Dad was pushing for full disclosure about the affair, while Mom's attorney was fighting hard to keep the reason sealed. It was getting expensive and nasty for both of them. 6 weeks after my ultimatum, the inevitable happened. Ethan found out how, and the rage was instant. I got a series of texts from an unknown number. You destroyed my family, you piece of trash. The messages escalated rapidly into threats, accusations, and incoherent rage. I saved every text and forwarded the string to Rebecca. This violates the restraining order, she said. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? Not yet. Let him rage. I might need documentation later. The text stopped after 2 days. Then Blake called. Ethan knows about Connor. Everything. Your dad told him. Said he was tired of living with the lies. The fallout was spectacular. Ethan's losing his mind. The wedding's off. Kelsey dumped him immediately when she realized he's not getting any inheritance money anymore. I couldn't help the small, grim smile that crossed my face. Kelsey's gold digging had been transparent from the start. Blake continued, his voice heavy with shock. It gets worse. Ethan went to Connor. He flew to Denver on a credit card he can't afford and confronted him. He walked right past the receptionist at Connor's consulting office, screaming about being his son. Connor was completely blindsided. His wife was there for a lunch meeting. Ethan caused a massive scene in front of employees and clients. Security had to escort him out. How'd that go? I asked, entirely without emotion. Connor's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, threatened a restraining order if Ethan contacts him again. Perfect. Ethan had burned through his last potential lifeline in spectacular fashion. And Kelsey? I asked. Gone. Dumped him the same day he found out about the DNA results, took her stuff, and moved back with her parents. The dominoes are falling faster than anyone expected, Joe. Your family's in meltdown mode. 3 months later, I had settled into a new normal. The restraining order meant Ethan stayed away, though burner phones occasionally reminded me of his existence. Mom tried reaching out through relatives. Dad had gone silent, having moved into a small apartment downtown. The divorce finalized in November. Mom got the Beaverton house and half the retirement accounts. Dad got his apartment and the other half. Neither seemed happy. Then came the Christmas text from Ethan. Hope you're enjoying your house while our family burns. 2 days before Christmas, Rebecca called. Ethan filed a lawsuit, she said, claiming you manipulated DNA evidence. It's absurd. It's legal harassment. What's the point? Is hoping you'll settle. The case is trash, Joe. DNA results are certified. but defending it means depositions and fees. It's just designed to cost you time and money. Not happening, I said without hesitation. We'll file to dismiss. Include the documentation of the violations, the sabotage, the break-ins. Let's finish this properly. The hearing was scheduled for a cold February morning. I spent Christmas alone, ordered Chinese takeout, and worked on design plans for the house. The phone stayed silent. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. I knew the final battle was coming, and I was ready for it. I stood in the courthouse parking lot, watching Ethan, defeated, gaunt, and empty. It wasn't triumph I felt, but the exhaustion of a 38-year-old war finally ending. The lawsuit hearing happened on a cold February morning. Ethan showed up representing himself. He looked terrible. Gaunt, exhausted, his clothes hanging off him. He hadn't been able to afford an attorney. The courtroom was small, and the proceedings were swift. Rebecca destroyed his case. She presented the certified DNA results from Helix Labs, complete with the chain of custody documentation. She submitted the restraining order with police reports attached, screenshots of Kelsey's calls to my clients, and bank records showing Ethan's massive financial dependency and credit card debt across 5 accounts. Ethan tried to argue, claiming I'd manufactured everything. His voice cracked halfway through his disorganized, rambling accusation. The judge cut him off after only 10 minutes. This case is without merit, the judge stated, his voice ringing with authority. The DNA evidence is certified and legally obtained. Your brother had legitimate reasons for protecting himself given the documented harassment. Your emotional distress stems from discovering a truth about your parentage, not from any wrongdoing on his part. Case dismissed. Furthermore, I am sanctioning you $5,000 for filing a frivolous lawsuit that wasted this court's time. Ethan's face went white. Outside, he caught up with me in the parking lot. He looked utterly destroyed. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. I stopped letting you take what wasn't yours. I replied, my voice steady. It was just a house. He pleaded. It was my life, my work, my proof I could build something on my own. You wanted to take it because you've never built anything yourself, because Dad always gave you everything. So you thought you deserved my house, too. It's not my dad, Ethan whispered, his voice breaking completely. I don't have a dad. Connor wants nothing to do with me. And Patrick, he can barely look at me now. Do you know what that's like? Yeah. Actually, I know exactly what it's like to have Dad look at you like you're disappointing. I told him, finally sharing the deep, old pain. I lived with that for 38 years while he looked at you like you hung the moon. The difference is I built something anyway. I was terrified of ending up like you. You just expected handouts. I was terrified of ending up like you. You just expected handouts. I was terrified of ending up like you. You just expected handouts. I lost everything because of you. My father, my relationship, my fiancé, everything. You lost everything because of choices your mother made before you were born and choices you made your entire life. I just stopped being collateral damage in your mess. You want advice. He stared at me, broken and desperate for direction. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Connor's not going to be the dad you want. Patrick isn't your father and probably won't be again. Mom can't enable you anymore. Figure out who you are without someone propping you up financially. Build something yourself for once. Easy for you to say, he muttered. You had everything figured out from the start. I had nothing figured out. I was just scared of ending up like you, broken, blaming everyone else. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in the cold, desolate parking lot. The final piece of the collapse fell into place in March. I received a certified letter from Mom's attorney. She was selling the Beaverton house. Too many memories, too expensive to maintain alone. But there was a separate letter from Mom herself, handwritten. Joe, I know you don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I've spent 3 months in therapy, trying to understand the damage I did to you and your brother. Not Ethan's therapy, mine, trying to own what I created. I had an affair. I lied for 34 years. I let your father overcompensate with Ethan in ways that hurt you. I enabled both of them instead of making hard choices. Those are my failures, not yours. You were right to protect your home, right to set boundaries. I can't undo the past. I can't rebuild what's broken. But I want you to know you deserved better from all of us. I'm sorry I couldn't give you that. Love, Mom. I read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer with the DNA results and all the other documentation of the family implosion. Ryder came by that evening with takeout. He found me sitting on my back deck, the air cool but clear, watching the sunset over the custom pergola I had built last month. You good? He asked. Yeah, better than good, actually. Ryder raised his takeout container. I'll drink to that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jerry, my neighbor, joined us later with his own soda. The three of us sat on the deck as the Portland sky faded into a deep twilight. The house looks good, Jerry said, gesturing at the new landscaping. Adding the outdoor kitchen next, I replied. Viking grill, stone countertops, built-in fridge, maybe a pizza oven. My business was solid again, 3 new contracts signed. The house was mine. Worth $720,000 now? According to the latest appraisal. No mortgage, no entitlement, no family claiming ownership of my sweat equity. This house had become the catalyst for my family's destruction. The demand for me to surrender it had exposed the rot that had been there for decades. My refusal had forced everyone to face truths they'd spent years avoiding. The DNA test had blown up whatever remained, and the explosion was still echoing. I didn't regret any of it. Not 1 second. Standing in my living room at midnight, I felt something I'd never felt in my family's presence. Peace. Not happiness. That seemed too simple for what had happened, but genuine peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're living honestly, even if that honesty burned down everything around you. The family I'd been born into was gone, scattered and broken. But I'd kept what mattered, and I'd set boundaries that protected me. Some people call that selfishness. I call it survival. And for the first time in 38 years, I had finally chosen myself. And for the first time in 38 years, I had finally chosen myself.